I've been trying to look for beauty all the time, and so I've been moved by beauty in some of the small details. For example, our Torah portion, Balak, begins with verse 2 of chapter 22. Vayar Balak. Balak saw all the Israelites had done and was afraid. But you might therefore wonder why the portion doesn't begin with verse 1. The chapter divisions are actually a medieval Christian introduction, whereas the divisions between weekly parshiot are much older. But still, when there's just one verse off between them, and they often do align, we might wonder, what's the power of starting where we started? What was the power of our verse rather than the verse before? Now, this week I came to the text keen to find meaning in such small details because I was inspired by listening to what Marilyn Robinson said in an interview with Ezra Klein about her recent book on Genesis. I love Robinson's novels, Gilead and Housekeeping, and her essays. She's a Christian theologian, and still I was struck in that interview by how she reads Torah in a way that I find Jewishly powerful. She reads it closely and kindly. In her book on Genesis, as was discussed in the interview, she writes, "This world is suited to human enjoyment. Out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight." And then in the interview, she discusses this line, and she explains something that I think is true. She says, we have desensitized ourselves to beauty quite considerably, to the idea that beauty is a harmonizing, interpretive presence in being. Now, the words in the interview that most moved and challenged me were this, her teaching, a mind that is schooled towards good attention sees beauty all the time. And she explained where she learned this from, saying, when I was in high school, I had a teacher who said to our class, you will have to live with your mind every day of your life. So make sure you have a mind that you want to live with. She was an English teacher telling us to find things that are beautiful, to expose yourself to them at length, give them preferential attention. Robinson said, I don't think anyone told me anything more important in my life. And we can find, Robinson said, a sensitivity from that experience of beauty, even in the small details, that can spread through experience in general. So immediately after listening, I went to see if I could find beauty in just a single line or words of the Torah portion by finding connections, harmonizing and interpreting within this harmonic treasure of a text, the Torah. Could I find something good with my good attention and do what I would encourage us all to do, which is school my mind through Torah? And I was moved by Robinson's teaching to school my mind, to develop this good attention, because we do have to live with our mind every day of our lives. And hearing that, I was aware that I don't always like my mind, that there's still schooling to be done. I too often lose my capacity to see good and beauty all the time, in stress and difficulty, in a narrowness of feeling and perspective, which maybe naturally comes when I feel or we feel pushed and then without agency. But I know I can find good in Torah. So maybe I can do this more mindfully and spread that awareness through my general experience. Maybe we all can. I saw then, when I rushed to Torah, that our portion begins with the second verse of chapter 22. Vayar Balak. Balak saw all the Israelites had done, and he was afraid. And I wondered why we don't begin with the verse just before that starts the chapter, last week's final verse. It reads, Vayisa'u b'nei Yisrael v'yachanu ba'arvat Moav. Now, if this was our parsha, we would start the people of Israel traveled and encamped on the plains of Moab. Balak saw Vayar Balak, and he was fearful. And I realized that if we started with that verse, it would seem like Balak's fear and consequent desire to do harm were forced upon him. A natural consequence of what he saw, the Israelites traveling towards him, encamped nearby, and he saw. But instead, our opening verse, by beginning with he saw, highlights the importance and agency of the active act of seeing. It insists upon the importance of determining one's own perspective. Vayar, he saw, he looked, and it was up to him what he chose to focus on and how he chose to feel and understand and interpret it. And I saw in looking at those small details too, that in starting our portion with the word Vayar, we recall the same single word emphatically and recurrently at the beginning of the Torah. Vayar Kitov. The divine created each element of this world, Vayar Kitov, and saw that it was good, suited to enjoyment and to inseparable moral goods, suited this world to each human made in the image of God, being able to thrive. So when we hear that one word, Balak saw Vayar, and he was afraid and hateful, we realize that he has been seeing wrong and that we can choose how we see and what we look for. He has looked at the wrong things in the wrong way. His way of looking is bad. He determined it wrongly. He hasn't schooled his mind or his eye to do what God teaches us seeing is all about at the beginning of the Torah. We are to look in the way that God looks. We're to look well, to see the good. And even in life's most difficult moments, we're to tend to our eye and to our mind, to our perspective. We are to emulate Moses because the Torah begins and ends with an act of seeing, as we hear that Moses' eye was not dimmed in those final verses, even at the end of life, confronting death in the land that he will unfairly not enter. When I came keen to find beauty, I was moved by a single word, Vayar, he saw, which teaches us to insist on looking for beauty. We can each school our minds towards good attention. We should find an attention that then inevitably finds beauty and good all the time and makes our lives pervade with it. This schooling is not exclusively a turning in, it's also a looking out, connecting and appreciating the greater goods in others and in this world. It's a genius of our Judaism that we're to look in and out. We can build an interface for finding and doing goods. We can each build our own harmonizing interpretive eye, and then we look out into the world and in Torah, and we find beauty and harmonies. And we might even find that there is an eye turned towards us too, interpreting us in the best light, asking us to be good and to be beautiful. We can school our minds towards this attention in one practical way by saying more blessings, or at least with the blessings we say, using them to cultivate that attention. Our Judaism offers so many blessings at times of day, as morning shifts to night and night to morning, in our spiritual practice and services before food and drink. So take on one more blessing, or just increase your attention while saying it. The last rabbinic teaching in the Mishnah on blessings tells us that we are to bless upon the bad as well as the good, to bless upon the painful, the horrific, And I want to think about this confrontational, complex teaching more, but I do feel that it's telling us to school our mind so well that we can see and cope with such pain and horror as we have seen this year, as we still see, and somehow still resolve that we will trust in and contribute to the good. We can also school our attention with Torah in looking for the power of a single line, a single word. And we can then finally take that sensibility, that sensitivity, and spread it to our experience in general, to the way one listens to a person, thinking, what good can I find here? What's constructive? What could be powerful? And to the way we look at the world. And that's one of the things I've been working on this week, because I know I do that spreading less well. So spread the attention throughout your life in general. To do this, I've been looking each day for that which is beautiful, enjoyable, good, and then sometimes trying to recall it specifically later in the day. So sometimes this week I've been spending more time, for example, with the feeling of Jules leaning into me for a hug, showing me that I'm at least her second favorite person in the world. And, you know, that's not bad. That's good, even. Or I've been reflecting one day on the patterning of shade and light on a Hackney corner on an afternoon drive in which Leah and I, driving for an hour together without recourse to phones, also had a really good conversation. And often I've simply been holding to mind a single word like Vayar, he saw, and remembering that we build our worlds and we can build this world out of schooling our minds to find that which is good and beautiful all the time.